I'm Senator Marilou McPhedran, an independent senator from Manitoba, Canada. And I'm here at the Canadian Mission to United Nations today for an amazing panel of Rohingya leaders, young and across the generations, who are leading at the local level, including in the camps in Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh. And what we're hearing is the power of the program of localization. That means supporting women leaders where they're living on the issues that matter to women and girls, and then bringing those women leaders to a UN context to amplify their voices. As a Canadian senator, I have worked internationally now for over 4 decades, and the focus has been on the human rights of women and girls, particularly in places of conflict. And what I have seen is brilliance, courage, and resistance to the kind of violence in its many forms that tries to stop women and girls, and it doesn't work. So here's a salute to the power, the tenacity, and the necessity of the leadership of women and girls in building peace for our world. Thank you very much, Mavic, and I am mindful that we just hit 1 o'clock, so I will keep my remarks very brief because we do want to stay on time. I'm an independent senator from Manitoba, from Treaty 1 territory of the First Nations and also the homeland of the Red River Métis Nation. I want to thank Ambassador Gray and the team here at the mission. And I also want to thank Global Affairs Canada for the numerous ways in which they have supported much of the work, the localization work. I remember having a conversation with Mavic over 11 years ago and hearing her articulate what was missing from, at that time, every program that was being funded to quote-unquote empower women. And that was work at the very local level and making that connection between women's leadership voices in their communities and women's leadership voices here in a United Nations context. And this panel today is a wonderful example of the changes that have been made. And I say this as a proud board member. GNWP has been a leader in this, and I think it's important to recognize that there has been a shift in attitude and understanding around the importance of women's local leadership and how that contributes to changes on a global scale. In 2017, I was one of a small group of parliamentarians waiting for Bob Ray, the special envoy, to get back from Cox's Bazar. We were in Dhaka. We sat together that evening, and I can tell you that the way he described the impact was very visible to us as parliamentarians, having the discussion with him about where Canada needed to go in terms of our leadership internationally. And one of the key points that came out of that conversation all the way back in 2017 was that the victimization of Rohingya women and girls was massive and profound, and their leadership was almost completely unrecognized. So Raja, I want to also give a shout out to you. I mean, you have been one of the early leaders, one of the early voices of women, and to have you here with us today is very special. Fahima, I was there in 2019 with Mavic and our board chair, Vandana Rana, of the CEDAW committee, working with young women at Cox's Bazar. We were treated to one of the theater performances, and that was a learning moment for me, where I really had an appreciation of the different kinds of literacy that we need to have in order to do effective peace building at the local level. and the influence of the co-creation of theater between young Bangladeshi women and young Rohingya women, and the resulting shift in sense of self, in that capacity, that sense of agency, of leadership and finding one's voice. I actually left Cox's Bazar, went to Dhaka, and had, shall we say, a spirited discussion with the Speaker of Parliament at the time, herself, like me, a human rights lawyer, and I think our Canadian High Commission at the time was a little nervous because we got pretty intense with each other. And I remember saying to her, you know as a human rights lawyer that there's a right to education for the Rohingya women in the camps. And it's being denied. And you know that this is a breach, at minimum, of the Convention on the Rights of the Child. Ambassador Ray spoke very, very effectively, as he always does, because his heart and his mind are fully engaged on the issue of the Rohingya and rights of Rohingya, and mentioned how policy is most effective when it's developed with those who are most affected by the policy. And we see that here today. My closing point is going to be about the nexus between women, peace and security, youth, peace and security. We're here looking at 24 years since the Resolution 1325, October 31st, 2000, focusing on women, peace and security. We have a whole cluster of resolutions that went over a period of 19 years that inform many aspects of the kind of peace building that we're doing. And we have, more recent comer, the Youth Peace and Security cluster, much smaller, but the combination of the two, again, this is something that GNWP has led on in the international community. How important it is to look not at separate spheres, but the intersections between women, peace and security, that cluster of resolutions, and the youth, peace and security. And I'm going to just note that the most recent Youth, Peace and Security Council Resolution 2535 puts responsibility on the Secretary General to report on youth, peace and security, including the previous two resolutions, and women, peace and security. And I venture to say that this has something to do with leadership, such as the amazing woman to my left here, and the GNWP organization. Last point, every crisis is an opportunity. And what we see here is women's leadership in a time of terrible crisis, but women's leadership seizing the opportunity across generations to step forward and lead. And that's what it's all about for those of us who are here today. Thank you so much. Merci. Big wish.